We have a very special guest joining us in the studio. We see him about once every month and a half or so. He's in the what we call the rotation, and that is the rotation that we have set up with the various members of the Twin Falls City Council. And in this form of government, of course, one of those members is the mayor, and that is Don Hall. And first of all, welcome back to the show today.
Well, thank you, Bill. It's a pleasure to be here.
We have 57. You probably driving in noticed it was a little chilly this morning, so
It was,
we'll
but
warm
it's going to
things
get
up.
warm.
Yeah, we'll warm things up today. Coming up on 8 minutes after 9 o'clock, this is Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. Before we get to the controversial subject, we still are going through budget hearings. We'll get that out of the way right away.
Right.
And once again, I was talking to one of your colleagues. I've talked to several of your colleagues about this. There is tremendous disappointment that every Monday afternoon, people have an opportunity to come in and comment about just about anything under the sun. You'll get hours of testimony on a small issue, such as backward parking on one street. And yet, when it comes to spending millions of dollars, you get very little input from members of the public, and you're still trying to get that.
Yeah, absolutely. We made the conscious decision that every time that we speak about the budget, we open it up to the public. I'm the mayor, so I open it up and say, anyone want to come up and make any comments? And we treasure the input from the citizens because we're spending their money. It's my money too, because I'm a citizen as well, but we're spending their money on priorities through our strategic plan that was developed by the community. But we would love to have them come and review. I certainly understand in today's age, we're all so busy. We've got so many irons in the fire and we're going 10 different directions with our kids and work and education, all those things. But again, please come. We would love to hear your input.
And one thing that I think we hear often, and I mentioned this last week during the segment, is you'll get voters after the fact who will come in and say, why are we doing this? Why is this happening? And so they really have to go out. If you're going to participate or you're going to later complain, you have to get active.
You do.
And educate yourself on exactly what this is all about.
You do. Yeah. And again, probably one of the more important things that your city council does is the budget. Because again, we're utilizing those funds to move forward priorities within the city, whether that's new roads or maintenance of roads or new treatment plants or parks or whatever. And it's so important to hear from them.
Now, on the subject that has become almost the subject du jour, at least in some corners of the community, last night there was a large gathering at one of the local churches, and I guess the night before in Filer, to hear a visiting pastor who was talking about what he feels are the dangers of trying to integrate Islam into a community. You have a public be heard section of your meetings. We were talking about this just before the show, before we went on air during the newscast today. So I would guess that because of the public concern that you're seeing people coming in droves and expressing that at council meetings. Is that the case?
That is not the case. I know that myself and several other council members have received emails and maybe some phone calls. I probably would classify that between a half a dozen and a dozen that I personally received regarding this, maybe a little more, but no one to the council meeting.
And yet there was an invitation, I guess, sent out to government officials to at least attend a luncheon with this pastor yesterday, and essentially they ate lunch alone. Is there an effort in government to just basically sort of try to brush people like him aside?
Well, I don't know. I can only speak for myself. This has not been a subject that's been on our agenda at the council meetings. I can only speak for myself. I know that I received something in email about him coming, but I didn't realize it was a luncheon. I thought it was just his event last night.
Okay.
And I could be wrong, but I don't remember being invited as a government official to any luncheon with him.
Okay. And I'm not sure that it was a luncheon. I know that there was a meeting of some sorts yesterday, and I assume that they would serve lunch if they wanted to bring people out.
Yeah.
So when you're hearing from people, are they distressed? And what can you tell them? I mean, is there anything the city
Well, yeah, I think you get varying degrees of distress regarding this. And I guess the first thing I want to say is that I certainly understand the concern. The whole radical Islam, ISIS, terrorism issues that we're seeing worldwide, and including in the United States, is very distressing, very concerning to me. But I try to measure my response as a human being, frankly, with are there radical wings of these folks out there? Absolutely. I mean, it's easy to find. But I also will tell you that I personally have friends that are Muslims in this community. I have colleagues that are Muslims that
Hmm.
are in this
Hmm.
community. And for full disclosure, I work for CSI as a law enforcement director of their program. And I have had refugees that have come through my program that are now active police officers within our community, serving our community, and there's probation officers and nurses that have all come through this refugee program and are contributing members of our society and our community. So I just try to balance all of that.
And I'll mention too as well. When I worked in television years ago, my best friend in the office was his father was Pakistani, his mother was Turkish, and he'd grown up in a Muslim family. At the time, the two of us probably didn't pay a whole lot of attention to religious faith. Maybe we do as we get older.
Right.
Uh, but I do know that there's a group out here in the community that believes they're simply not being heard, and maybe that's
Hmm.
really what this all comes down to. Maybe it's not so much opposition, um, but is there a better way for government, local governments, to communicate with these people than perhaps with via email invitations and the like, or something along those lines? Because sometimes, as you pointed out, through email things can fall through the cracks, and you lose track of things and the
Well,
like.
the other thing I try to do with email is use it limited, very limited, because you don't have any tone inflections or facial expressions through email, so you don't know what the other person's truly because again, communication is what 80% body language,
Hmm. Hmm.
and so I would rather sit down. In fact, I had an email this morning while I was out in the parking lot. I responded to a gentleman that has concerns about it. I said, if you ever want to sit down and talk about it, I'd be more than happy. I'd hear your perspective.
The city, from what I understand, cannot put its foot down and say no, because this agreement was done so long ago, and it was done by governments that it all comes downhill when you're talking
Yeah, it
about
comes from
government.
the federal government. Sure.
And so when the state entered into the agreement, there's not really you can't throw up a barrier on the streets and say don't come here.
No, I mean that's obviously not practical, and that's not something I would support, frankly, either. I think the dialogue is good. I think that we need to discuss this. We need to
Sure.
understand what the vetting process of folks coming into our country is, and I think that's probably that where we're seeing most of the controversy is because we don't understand or know what the vetting process is because maybe we're not being given that on a federal level. I know locally, going out and talking, I personally went out and talked. I grabbed our city manager and our deputy city manager from our public safety, and we went out and talked to Zeze when we first heard the controversy about the Syrian issue, and out at the refugee center, and he walked us through the process that he went through, frankly, and how long they had to be in refugee camps, and that they are outcasts, if you will, from these communities. They're the oppressed. These are
Hmm.
folks that have nothing when they get here. Family members have been murdered. Business has been taken away from them. No homes. And so he walked us through that, and that gave us a better sense of exactly what's happening. But I think really, I think I'm dominating this, but I think really where the controversy is it's a political controversy. Who's at the helm of the ship right now, the administration, compared to who used to be, and what your political persuasion is. If there was someone there, I tend to be a conservative Republican personally. Okay, if there was
A
someone
couple of
at the
those in the
helm,
room right now.
okay,
Yeah.
but I love to use the word compassion because I have it. I understand, and I have compassion for human beings. But if there was a conservative Republican at the helm, I would be less concerned. Okay, than when there is someone that's maybe of the other persuasion. I
Hmm.
think that's a lot of what's going on in our
Yeah, we don't maybe
society.
have quite the same type of watchdog effort going
We
on.
don't have the same level of trust, I think is a lot of it.
We have only about 3 minutes to go. Don Hall is our guest in studio, mayor of Twin Falls, joining us today on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 58 right now, coming up on 9:17. Before we do wrap up, for a lot of people on a completely different topic, I notice outside my house we're going to have some paving done on the street.
Okay.
And do we have a place we could go and look up paving schedules?
Yes, on our website, you would be able to see exactly what's going on. And if it's not clear to you there's phone numbers that you can contact the city, and we will walk you through that. Because obviously, when we talk about paving and chip sealing and all those things, those can be very disruptive.
I need to
Okay.
know when I have to move the car.
Yeah, move the car, or maybe you want to not go down that road right now because they're doing chip sealing. May I say one more thing about the refugee?
Sure.
I 2 years ago, or about 3 years ago, I was invited to the Muslim center here in town for Ramadan, and frankly, I didn't know what Ramadan was. I know it's a sacred thing for Muslim, uh, and the I was invited as the mayor, and it was a warm reception that I got. I got a tour of their center. I found it fascinating talking to the different folks that were there from all over the world. Sometimes you have this preconceived notion who a Muslim is, okay, but it's not.
Right.
It's every nationality, every race, every and again, I've been in the audience listening to the local imam, and he preaches peace over and over again. So that's been my experience locally.
We have a caller with us. We'll try to squeeze the caller in before the break. Nope, I think our caller decided to. We'll try one more line. You're on the air at 9:18 with Mayor Don Hall.
Hi, I'm on the air now?
Yes.
Okay. I have a question about this backflow testing. I got a letter. It's been on the books since 1999, but all of a sudden it's a big emergency that we have to have our residential sprinkler systems tested for backflow, and it's going to be an every year thing.
We got about 30 seconds.
And this is coincidental to the Syrians, to a big influx of refugees, and it seems to me like that this is just a jobs program for the CSI refugees.
Well, 30 seconds.
Okay, that is not correct. It's a totally different subject. The refugee situation has nothing to do with the backflow. We are just fulfilling our obligation when it comes to groundwater and drinking water safety.
And again, if you have any questions about backflow, just show up at a council meeting.
Absolutely.
All right. We want to thank you for coming by today. You're the first person I know in local government who's talked about this subject, and you weren't shy about it.
Well, thank you, Bill. And I will talk to anyone about it anytime.
I was going to say, conservative Republican law enforcement, yeah, shy is not part of his makeup. Twin Falls Mayor Don Hall joining us in studio this morning. It's 59, coming up on 9:20. Hey, I want to tell you a story about some people in a local community who have been trying or are accused of trying to poison dogs and cats. That's on the way in just a few minutes.